is a very delicate time. Know then that it is the year 10,199. The known universe is ruled by the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV, my father. In this time, the most precious substance in the universe is the spice melange. The spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital for space travel. The Spacian Guild and its navigators, who the spice has mutated over 4,000 years, use the orange spice gas, which gives them the ability to explore space. That is, travel to any part of the universe without moving. Oh yes.
A Zora princess with the power to heal others' wounds was selected to pilot divine beast Varuta. Accompanied by Link and the rest of her party, Zelda headed to Zora's domain, where she was granted an audience with King Dorephan.
Hang on.
The planet is Arrakis, also known as June.
That's not good.
Mifa, pilot the divine beast.
This is all way too bright.
Yes, my father, King Rome, has faith she will do.
Begin by simply listening. Slow down and see just how peaceful today can be. Thank you so much for being here. This is going to be with the silver.
With your permission, of course.
This will be a dangerous mission.
I'm really excited.
Piloting the divine beast against the darkness. And I understand that the night who will see that darkness has not yet appeared.
That is true.
But must refuse. I cannot send my daughter into such peril.
But
Your Majesty! I bring news!
Well, you've grown since I last saw you. And yet, you have not changed. This creature is a guardian. How cute.
Princess Mifa! Monsters on Ploymus Mountain, marching this way.
What of my father?
His Majesty is leading the army to intercept. He thought the prince was here with you.
Sidon is missing. We will find Sidon. You must watch over the domain.
Highness!
Right? No. Is that fine? Okay.
Nothing I've ever owned was more precious. If not for this outfit, then I'd never have been at that level. I can still see my father wearing it, with the light of the cherry blossoms on it. I'll say it to you, Bruce. Wear it to grow up. The thing in the ball was flying pigeons, and Dad's costume took first flight. Just signs before a great gun man took that. Better come and let's go. Somebody gets hurt. It seems like I've no choice. The punks brought Dad to a warehouse. And they're more sad waiting. You're lucky. The banker on the police are after you. Yeah, one of them will be. And I want you to remove the scarf. Dad knew that once he'd strapped the book, Watson would never let him in. He saw how the bone boy she said it was. He took it. And before the scuffle burst in the end, they put him in the wind of lobster. By the time Watson was going to recover, he was alive. He took him a young and two, and James never removed. The trial was the shortest in Gotham City's history, thanks mostly to my father's detailed testimony. And when the furious Watson was sentenced to 10 years in prison, you did this to me, Wayne. I swear I'll get this. I'll get you. And the summer, as my parents and I looked home, okay, this is a stick up. I'll take that necklace you're wearing, lady. You put on to forget me another wife. Beside my parents' bodies. Until a gentlewoman named Leslie Tompkins took me into her arms and did her best to soothe me. I stayed over for that, but that I will never fully repay. At the funeral, I was no shy at, so I simply stood there and gave a silent farewell to the dead of my mother. I have not shed a single tear ever since.
The tail leaves it.
Shoot. Introducing me to his housekeeper. I had to try my first, and I couldn't really train Mrs. Chilton. Mrs. Chilton saved my sanity effort. She cared for me, comforted me, taught me honesty and integrity. In so many ways, she was like a second mother to me. She was also able to let that man spoil her. That's because she's never about. Like no fashion, That woman more than made amends for the son's peace crime. I try to figure out how to make it tough. My spirit is in real peace. Until at last, driven by emotions I could no longer control, I knelt by my parents' graveside. I in the sky bore witness as I made a solemn vow. I was a pre-adolescent boy, impatient to be man. My work was hard, but I welcomed it. I needed it, and nothing would keep me from it. I studied, and more importantly, I learned. And when that spectacular summer was finally through, you're good, son, but you still need years of practice. But one day, when you're fully trained, when you're fully grown, you may well become the greatest detective of us all. I'll do my best to make you proud of me, son. Although I didn't know it then, Harvey Harris was the first person to solve the secret of my double identity. But he's long dead now, Mr. Stewart. So that eliminates him as a suspect in this. I should certainly hope so, sir. Still, as the years passed, I never forgot what Harris had taught me, and I trained myself as best I could, striving for physical perfection. When I turned 18, I could have been living material types I chosen. But for me, there never really was a choice. I had to continue my education if I was going to fulfill my childhood vow. My college major was in criminology, so I studied it out of necessity. I made certain I learned everything. I minored in psychology because I needed to know more than just the criminal method. I had to understand the criminal mind as well as I knew my own. But within my law class, under the tutelage of Professor Amos Rexford, that I learned my greatest lesson.
Rexford is smiling today. Looks like we're really in for it.
If that's a smile, I hate to see the man when he's frowning. You're all seated, we can begin. Two 19-year-old boys steal a car for a joyride. Along the way, one of them changes his mind and asks to be let out of the car. Before his friend who is driving can comply, the car accidentally strikes an old woman crossing the street. Should the boy who changed his mind still be charged with felony manslaughter? Mr. Wayne, granted, the second one still be complicated. Under the law, the second boy was just as guilty of complicity as if he had been behind the wheel. But is that justice, Professor Richard? No, Mr. Wayne. That's the law. Thus, after graduation, as a student, before I count please. Forgive me, Mom, Dad, but I can't get to the police as I was like to. But you have a house to live in, as a student. It has to be your yes. My father showed me some information on the country's wealthiest men, and I wanted to put that fortune to use. There's only so much more I can do. But there are issues that the information become very important for America or anywhere. To me, why? It's so good. Maybe not fast. Maybe I have to become more than that. I have to become a fool. Come up with a superstitious comedy plot. So I have to wear the sky and still try to do the house. I must be a creature of light. And as if an answer, a dark windshield flew into the open window. I'm back. That's it. The second open, I show you how I'm back. Just as gold and blue are filled with the shadows, a cloud of evil, run by man. It's the day I found my brothers to the when the earth had fallen, and the downs and the I stopped to check out a transport truck with a crash outside the room. Look! The secret door on the top side, and there's a man coming out. Man, Robin, well, you ain't taking me. I'll make you for that car. But before the car clock could pull his trigger, the rider in control room put an end to his threat. By the time I reached police headquarters, the mission building already had this full of information. All the kind of traffic fast man was smuggling microbes across the state lines. And they were running that with a man named Joe Sherry. He's a busy fellow. Of course, I know him in the suit. did you say? William? That killed Thomas William and his wife. They were fighting for happily. But then we learned Bruce memorized his features. Bruce Wayne can still identify that killer, Jim. It was you. Yeah, the prophet. You know me. I know it was I am the son of you and your Jim. I know it was I am Bruce Wayne. Jim made that damn right now. You see, you finally did it. Following restoration, Jim ran to a private office to the unconscious on the floor. Still with us, Jill? But not for long. Funny, because I started you off as the Batman. This is horrible. Guess it, in the long run, ugly after all. No, Jill, the Batman didn't finish you. It was Bruce Wayne. I thought that further inquiry had the case. I put away the file and I marked it closed. I was wrong. And then it was. It was a year or so later, when we were cleaning out the attic. I accidentally discovered a secret drawer in my father's old desk. It's a can of film and an old diary hidden in here. And his own costume. I think I've seen it before. On my father. You can't imagine how I felt watching that image of film. Seeing my father again as I remembered him. So warm, so strong. Knowing that death would soon steal that smile forever. The whole movie ended with Dad's kidnapping. But the diary, written in my father's own hand, told me everything else I needed to know. His name was Joe Chill, and he pretended to be old. He was actually Lou Moxon's hired killer. Moxon must have wanted Chill not to kill me, so I'd be able to testify that my parents were killed by a frightened mob. Good grief, Bruce. Moxon used you as his alibi. And now he's going to pay for it. Didn't you, Pastor Norman? We just reopened the Wayne murder case. We quickly learned that Moxon was now in the advertising bullet business out in Coast City. And we wasted no time getting there. I don't know who can make fun of him, Robin. Still faces any to start. The whole family was troubled with a capital T. I knew the girl was in tightness by the time we finally finished with Moxon and his mom. Come on, Moxon. You've been all over the gate for the police. But when we actually brought Moxon, he said, "Hello, Moxon. I'm shouting in with the name of Dr. Thomas Wayne.
Huh? I never heard of any Dr. Wayne. It wouldn't take a lie detector test to prove it.
I haven't questioned his boxing as a chemical command. When the interrogation was finally over,
See, Chris, back. The need to get him down once. Nobody can beat this machine. Something must be telling the truth.
this is impossible. It can't be. I stood by helplessly as Moxon was released on bail for assault and battery, and I could feel him laughing at me behind my back over the way. In desperation, I called Commissioner Wharton. And my whole squadron, as he told me.
Moxon was in a car accident right after Dr. Wayne was murdered, and he sustained a head injury. One day, he wandered away from the hospital and simply faded out of the picture. Until now.
This
The man
is
head injury must have given Moxon amnesia. He honestly doesn't remember Thomas Wayne. But as I prepared to confront Moxon with this knowledge,
Your costume is really shredded, Batman. And you didn't bring a spare. How about wearing your father's costume?
why not? It would certainly be appropriate. It would be almost as if Dad were arresting Moxon. Later, alone in his office, Moxon looked up to find a green figure framed in the door. I've come for you, Moxon.
Ooh, that costume. I
Shoot.
before.
I have
From long ago, Doctor. Wayne. Yeah, he wore that outfit. But he's dead. Go away. You're dead. I paid Joe Chill to kill you. Just leave me alone.
It's more than I could hope for. The shock of seeing his old costume was restored Moxon's memory. In a blind panic, Moxon raced past him, out into the street, and directly into the path of an oncoming truck.
Keep out of the way.
destroyed.
Kill me.
Destroyed.
Young Moxon died with my father's name still on his lips. I wanted to take him alive, to stand trial for his crimes, but his own guilt convicted him in a far higher court.
Shoot.
The night was oddly peaceful when I stood by my parents' graves for the final time. I said goodbye. It's over, Mom. Dad, finally over. I've done as I promised you. Perhaps now you can finally rest in peace. I have not been back to the cemetery since. But my parents are with me. They'll always be with me in spirit. Whoever is behind this may destroy a costume, but never a dream.
Did you learn anything from the remnants, sir?
Not enough, Alfred, and not nearly enough. But the hunt is only beginning.
I'll keep the room fires burning, sir.
And with that, the sleek Batmobile roars through a lengthy tunnel to exit the Batcave with a secluded cul-de-sac called Finger Alley, several blocks distant. The black-cloaked legacy that Gotham father had unwittingly left him had been destroyed. And there was nothing that could be done about it now, save to exact some small measure of vengeance. Eyes narrowed, jaw clenched, and grinning Batman spoke the words of early this evening come back to him. I have not shed a single tear in my parents' memory since their funeral, he had said. And he had been right. Until now.
very delicate time. Know then that it is the year 10,191. The known universe is ruled by the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV, my father. In this time, the most precious substance in the universe is the spice melange. The spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel. The Spacing Guild and its navigators, who the spice has mutated over 4,000 years, use the orange spice gas, which gives them the ability to fold space. That is, travel to any part of the universe without moving. Oh yes, I forgot to tell you. The spice exists on only one planet in the entire universe. A desolate, dry planet with vast deserts. Hidden away within the rocks of these deserts are a people known as the Fremen, who have long held a prophecy that a man would come, a Messiah, who would lead them to true freedom. The planet is Arrakis, also known as June.
The makers of Campbell Soups present the Campbell Playhouse. Orson Welles produces. Good evening. This is Orson Welles. Tonight we broadcast our version of what is generally regarded as one of the Playhouse. Orson Welles produced. Good evening. This is Orson Welles. Tonight we broadcast our version of what is generally regarded as one of the greatest of the modern mystery murder novels. In some peculiar fashion, it seems to have become necessary to defend the murder mystery as a form of entertainment. Heavy artillery is brought up in its behalf. President Wilson, as it proclaimed loudly, could not go to sleep or could go to sleep, one does not remember the point exactly, until a certain number of conflicting clues that managed to efface the days
A successful preview videos ever. So, as we say on Zen Theatre Live. Oh, by the way,
not particularly shameful.
we cordially
I
invited
have
to
never
check out
understood the need for
Around
this
the World
defense. Murder mysteries are, among other things, our most moral form of entertainment. The wrongdoer is regularly apprehended. He is not, I have incredibly missed some fascinating black sheep of an author in a plot otherwise startlingly white. And one learns an obvious lesson that to be suspected wrongfully is in due course to be triumphantly cleared of suspicion. Life doesn't always proceed according to this admirable pattern. The apologist would do better to defend life, I sometimes think. To help us solve the mystery of the murder of Roger Akroyd here tonight, we are fortunate in having a very powerful ally, a most distinguished lady and one of your favorite actresses. A lady in whose ears a nation of applause is still ringing for her latest brilliant success in Drums Along the Mohawk. Miss Edna May Oliver. But before we delve into the mysteries of this night's doings, Ernest Chappell has a comment to make on something which appears to be no mystery at all. Mr. Chappell.
Thank you, Orson Welles. I'd like to ask all of you if you'll do this. The next time you're out in the car, driving along the highway, just note the great number of eating places that display as their main invitation to you the words chicken dinner. The reason, of course, is simply that the proprietors of these eating places know by long experience that to nearly all of us, one dish that is a symbol of good eating is chicken. Now, because chicken is a favorite dish with nearly everyone, it's really no mystery at all why Campbell's chicken soup continues to grow steadily in popularity. You see, in every drop of the glistening golden broth, there's the rich chicken flavor you like so much. Steeped in deep chicken flavor, too, is fluffy white rice in every fragrant plateful. And you'll also enjoy the pieces of melting tender chicken meat that Campbell's adds. Yes, here is chicken soup, deep and full and rich. And you'll appreciate that from your first brimming spoonful. If you've already enjoyed this homey old-fashioned chicken soup as Campbell's make it, won't you remember to have it again soon? And if you haven't yet tried it, won't you do so at dinner tomorrow night? Because I promise you, just as sure as you like chicken, you'll like Campbell's chicken soup. And now our Campbell Playhouse presentation of the murder of Roger Akroyd with our guest of the evening, Edna May Oliver. And ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I think you'd like to know that we have with us in the studio tonight, as a surprise visitor, none other than the celebrated Belgian detective, Mr. Hercule Poirot.
Ladies and gentlemen, did you believe that?
If we have time, which we have not, I'm sure nothing would please us more than to hear from Mr. Poirot. Unfortunately...
Why, unfortunately, when we have here a microphone?
Look, Mr. Poirot, you don't understand.
I understand only that since my arrival in your country some weeks ago, I observed that there circulates an impression of my person which I must now publicly refute. I trust that the embarrassment of my presence here tonight in Mr. Wells' studio will ensure from him an honest and lifelike portrait. It has been said that I am a literal man. Regard for yourself that this is not so. I have 5 feet 2 inches of high. My head is perhaps egg-shaped, and I carry it perhaps a little to one side to the left, but my eyes shine green when I am excited. The on this my mustache are the largest in Europe, and my bald is in my brain and not in my teeth. If these things are made clear, and Mr. Wells is a tribute to ask you to follow, I will be satisfied. The results of my little great bells will speak for themselves. If you will show me where I am to be, I thank you.
This is Mr. Poirot, Mr.
How do you do?
Miss Oliver, you were both wanted to meet me. I am sure I compliment you.
Please, Mr. Poirot. Ladies and gentlemen, our Campbell Playhouse presentation of the murder of Roger Akroyd. I want you to start with give you some idea of the village of King's Abbot, which I have so many years been the leading, I must admit, also the only physician and surgeon. My name, by the way, is Shepherd, James Shepherd. We have a large railway station, small post office, 2 rival general stores, very few able-bodied men, a staggering number of unmarried ladies, not getting any younger, and an amazing number of retired military officers, all of whom are getting older. In fact, the only newcomer for many months is next door to me, and whom little is known despite the earnest and tireless investigation carried on in respect to him by my sister Caroline. Caroline and her little group of earnest terrorists, or maiden ladies, like herself, have been forced to content themselves with the simple fact of his nationality, which is alien, of his name, which is Poirot, the obvious fact that he putters around his garden all day growing cucumbers, and the suspicion based chiefly on malicious deductions of society hairdresser. Let's see, now, the main house very important in Derby, Sterling Hall, owned by Roger Akroyd, is also more like a country squire than any country squire from railway offices. Actually, an immensely wealthy manufacturer's wagon built in his 50 years of age, moving to the face of the genial man and general life and soul of our sweet, peaceful village. The other house in importance is next to Mrs. Ferrars by her late husband. Mrs. Ferrars died on the night of 16th September, a little less than a week ago. She's gone to man. I sent over for 8 o'clock in the morning, 17th. There's nothing to be done. She can take some hours. I turned to my home as soon as I decently could, looking for happiness and warm breakfast sadness, and rather unhappily, the certainty of a relentless cross-examination by my sister Caroline.
Is that you, James? What on earth are you doing out there in the hall?
Just taking up my overcoat, my dear.
Oh, Mrs. Burroughs died in her sleep, didn't she?
Baking is cold. How did you know? I was at dawn securing information instead of warming the baking is added. I thought you're going to damage that heart failure.
Annie told me. And your friend told her. He had it from the last cook.
Since you're bound to hear sooner or later, Caroline, from the greengrocer or the postman, I'm going to tell you myself. She died of an overdose of sleeping medicine. She was sleeping well later.
Nonsense. She took it on purpose.
Now, why on earth should Mrs. Ferrars wish to commit suicide? A widow, still fairly young, very well off, good health, nothing to do with enjoy life.
And looking forward to marrying Roger Akroyd. Don't forget to do that out.
That's an item of fact only in your local gossip circle.
Now, fact's the fact. There is such a thing as remorse, James. Even if you're as wealthy as Mrs. Ferrars.
Rumor.
I have always been convinced she poisoned her husband, and I'm more than ever convinced of it now. If you'd arranged an inquest years ago, as I suggested,
You're talking nonsense, Caroline.
then you're absolutely satisfied it was an accident.
I'm satisfied this bacon is not going to get any warmer by itself. This time I went to the surgery to see my patient.
All right, James, you don't have to be grumpy about it. Oh, by the way, Mr. Akroyd's butler, Parker called me.
What about?
Mr. Akroyd wants to know if you'll dine with him this evening. He says he'd regard it as a great favor if you cancel any other engagement.
Of course now, don't worry, Caroline. I may tell you all about the dinner tomorrow.
Oh, then I'll give you something to tell Mr. Akroyd tonight. Rafe Peyton, that's good Peyton, yes. He's staying at the dog and whistle. I know he's taking particular pains to be sure that Mr. Akroyd doesn't find out about it.
I wouldn't dream of telling him Roger Akroyd's relation to his stepson is own affair. Believe me, Caroline, according to every interpretation except your own.
I can't help it if people tell me things.
In answer to questions.
Well, you better rush along to that precious surgery of yours. You've got 4 patients with you.
How do you know?
So one can't see through a window. If one's looking through a window.
The distance from my house to Stewart Hall, Roger Akroyd's home, is over 2 miles. I remember that evening as I walked, with the subject of Caroline's biggest piece of gossip kept returning to my mind. Rafe Peyton was in King's Abbot. Rafe Peyton I'd known and liked since he was a child. Adopted by Akroyd on the death of his mother, he'd grown up to be a handsome, but what our narrow little village regarded as a rather wild young man. He'd had many stormy scenes between his stepfather and himself before he finally left for London. According to Caroline, he was secretly engaged to Flora Akroyd, Roger Akroyd's niece, who with her mother was now living in Stewart Hall. According to Caroline, I say, and Caroline's information, I'm afraid, is always exact, however illegitimate her thoughts may be. What's the trouble, Akroyd? Been under the weather?
Yes, Doctor. I've had a little of that pain out of food lately. Just give me some more of those tablets of yours.
I thought as much, Akroyd. I brought them up with me. My bag in the hall, I get them.
No, no trouble.
And make certain that window's closed with your trip, of course. Well, that's important. I'll put the ledge across with him. All right? That's what's really bothering you, Akroyd. Yes. The door's closed, isn't it? Shepard, nobody knows what I've gone through in the last 24 hours. What's the trouble? There's no friend, Doctor. My oldest friend, perhaps. You attended Ashley Fellows in his last illness, didn't you? Yes, I did. Is it into your mind? He might have been poisoned. Frankly, I don't think he was poisoned. By whom? His wife. So that's so. Even a few hours before she died, she told me this. Some weeks ago, I asked Mrs. Fellows to marry. She refused. Last week, I asked her again. She yesterday, I called upon her. I noticed that she'd been very strange in her manner for some days. Now, without the least warning, she broke down completely. Told me everything. Hatred of her swine of a husband, her growing love for me, and then, a year ago, the dreadful means she had taken to free herself. It's poison, Chapter. Murder in cold blood. Murder? Are you sure? That wasn't all. It seems there's one person who's known all along what she did, who's been blackmailing her for huge sums. It's the strange fact that so many others. Who's the man? She wouldn't tell me his name. Have you any suspicion? I don't dare have suspicion. Something she said made me think of the person in question. I actually live a member of my uncle. But that can't be so. I don't make it this way. What did you say to her? What could I say? She made me promise to not to bring the phone out. She refused to give me the name of the scoundrel who'd been blackmailing her. I never dreamed she'd say it. You handed that letter on the
Focus. The release. It's a pattern. Lost your mind, you're crazy. You're crazy and I've nothing to say or to share.
You think she wrote you a little bit she didn't tell you, is that it? Name of the man? Yes, I think so. I've got to admit, great. Okay. Huh. I thought the letter the dog gave a bit. Yeah? Let's see if there's anyone else. No. No, that's it. Are you sure you got the witness? Yes, of course. Well, I'll read it. If I read it to you, it won't seem so bad. I want the statement to learn. No matter what the name. My dear, I believe your letter. A life calls for a life. See that? I saw it in your face this afternoon. So I'm taking the only road for you. I leave to you the punishment of the person who made my life a hell on earth for the last year. I would not tell you his name this afternoon, but I propose to write it to you now. Dear Doctor, now that I have nothing more to say. Will you forgive me, Shepard, but I see I'm experience to learn it. Meant to my eyes, I have to learn. You know this one, brother. I'd rather wait. Very good. Just I'll not anything help you. If you must put it that way, yes, my dear friend, I do. Not sorry. I left Birmingham Hall at 9:15. From Birmingham, my house takes us to about 3/4 of an hour. And that was a moon shining, and I should have left. The road I noticed the lights blazing off twilight. Caroline is entertaining. Through the window I saw kind of an egg-shaped head, partially covered with suspiciously black hair, two immense mustaches, and a pair of watchful eyes. Come in, come in, come in. You're just in time for hot milk and crackers. Thank you, Doctor. It's like hello, Dr. Shepard. I am in charge. Dave? Quite well. How do you do, sir? Mr. Quite office, how do you leave her? If I may be permitted the one slight correction, my name is Akroyd. Your good sister proceeds on the familiar English assumption that we are not English, do not know how to pronounce our own silly names.
It's just making fun of me, Dave, but it's a very dry week. We had quite an interesting conversation.
I question it. It's exciting.
And you know what Mr. Poylock told me? He's a policeman.
Pardon, mademoiselle. Not yet. I see you appreciate Hercule Poirot. It is true worth. The name Poirot, mademoiselle, is known today in every continent, every land.
Oh no. No. Okay, okay. Come here. No. Shoot. No. 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 Oh no, I messed it up. Oh no. What have I done? No. Oh, okay, so over here. First. How about that?
An Invisalign smile is so powerful, you can face anything. Invis is 10 million smiles strong. Invisalign.
That's really quiet.
Slow down and see just how peaceful today can be. Thank you so much for being here. You can call me Sebastian Smalls. If this goes right, this is gonna be Orson Welles' Christmas Carol and Legend of Zelda. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Again, thank you so much for being here. Wish us luck.
That's racist. No, I don't want to do this one right now. I want to do
They look also
who have long
at her
held
neck,
the
the two
prophecy.
doctors. Sorry, this went out.
It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be one for one. However little known the feelings or views of such a man may be on his first entry a neighborhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered the rightful property of the You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it. Why, my dear, you must know, Mrs. Long has a letter illustrated by a young man, large
The beginning is a very delicate time. Know then that it is the year 10.
I think we just went live. Okay, so hi, I'm Christina, the manager at the Pacific Beach Library. We are reading Day 5 of Dracula, and of course, this is a very spooky story about crazy and supernatural kind of things, which could perhaps explain why. Could the vampires have something to do with why I have my phone turned on each light today? Let's blame the vampires. Again, for listeners that are here to the cast, I do apologize. I don't know what's going on. Again, we'll try to fix it and get it better by next week. But in the meantime, we'll continue with our story. Thank you again for being here. So, for the recap of this, I lose our connection yet again, but if we do, it's not a terrible thing, I guess. I get to have a nice sip of tea each time to start out. So, one more time. Today, we are going to read chapter 5.
The beginning is a very delicate time. Know then that it is the year 10,191. The known universe is ruled by the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV, my father. In this time, the most precious substance in the universe is the spice melange. The spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel. The Spacing Guild and its navigators, who the spice has mutated over 4,000 years, use the orange spice gas, which gives them the ability to fold space. That is, travel to any part of the universe without moving. Oh yes, I forgot to tell you. The spice exists on only one planet in the entire universe. A desolate, dry planet with vast deserts. Hidden away within the rocks of these deserts are a people known as the Fremen, who have long held a prophecy that a man would come, a Messiah, who would lead them to true freedom. The planet is Arrakis, also known as June.
So 97 years after publication.
Hey, cat. Gibson. Hey, cat.
Welcome back. I'm Christina, the manager of the Pacific Beach Library. Thank you for joining me for day 12 of our read-along together of, ready, let's go for it, Dracula by Bram Stoker. And so, let's see, today, for tea, I did decide to take the plunge. I'm going to finish off that other tea, so today is the last of our Earl Grey de la Creme. But I have fancy new teas to try tomorrow, so we'll experiment with those. And let's see. This smells so good. You've heard me talk about this tea a lot if you've been reading with me for a while. Hello, good to see you. I'm fascinating for anyone who's here today. Are you drinking anything fun? Also, are you reading anything fun outside of Dracula? I always like to see what folks are reading and get good ideas from it. Not that I don't already have a huge pile of books at home to read, but you know how it is. You can always have more books to read. That's delicious. And more teas to drink. Alright, so let's talk a little bit before we get into the reading. I posted a poll yesterday afternoon. So far, as of right before we went into today's reading, I looked at the poll results. 8 people had voted that they wanted us to just do the live readings, so that means we would only post readings Monday through Thursday, and no one had voted for the option of having to take reading on Friday. So I'm just going to call it right now. I figure we've got our decision made. So I'm just going to go ahead and after this week, I'm going to just do the readings Monday through Thursday. This week, I'm going to do one last Friday reading, and the reason is that it just works out with the timing, with the number of chapters that we have, that if we do a reading this Friday and then only Monday through Thursday for the rest of the readings, we will finish up on Thursday, October 29th, which means by Halloween, we will have the conclusion of our tale of Dracula. And then we can make a decision too if we want to maybe have a little party either the following Monday or perhaps on Halloween itself. So we'll figure that out later. But for now, the decision has been made. We're going to go ahead and just do the live streams, and our last live stream will be this Friday. Our last Friday live stream will be this Friday, and then we'll keep going after that with just Monday through Thursday readings together. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what happened in yesterday's chapter of Dracula. Yesterday, chapter 11, it was really good. It started out with Lucy Westenra talking about how, fortunate she felt that all these folks were taking care of her. And then Dr. Van Helsing was saying that, he was quite smug because he knew that he had left Lucy Westenra surrounded by garlic blossoms and that there was no way that any unwanted visitors of the vampiric sort would be able to enter her room. And when he arrives at the house, again, he's quite happy. Neither he nor Dr. Seward stayed the night because Dr. Van Helsing was so confident that Lucy would be fine. And when they go in there, they run into Lucy's mother, who says, "Oh yes, she's sleeping like an angel. She's not disturbed at all. She's just so calm." And he's like, "Wow, that's great." And he's like patting himself on the back, like it's because of my wonderful garlic. And then she continues, "Well, it's not all you. I also helped her. I noticed you had these stinky garlic flowers even on her, so I took them off of her and I opened the windows and I aired out the room so she wouldn't get suffocated by the garlic." He's like,
The Emperor.
no, he didn't want to say anything directly to her because that Mrs. Westenra has, she's in poor health and she doesn't need a shock. But of course, when he goes in, he sees that Lucy has, lost more blood in the night, that Dracula did come in. And so he actually, this time, he gives a blood transfusion. So Dr. Van Helsing is the blood donor this time to try to revive Lucy Westenra. After that, there's, the doctor continues to watch over her to make sure that she has the necessary garlic. He warns her mother specifically that, this is part of her treatment. Even if it stinks a little bit, just need to keep it there. And Lucy is actually really pleased. She's saying how, she seems to be doing so well. She is, she's finally even gotten used to the smell of garlic. She's so happy. She's so healthy. She's so grateful for Dr. Van Helsing and his kind care for her. And then, so that was on the night of the 17th of September. What's interesting after that is that there is a snippet mixed in next from the Pall Mall Gazette, which is a newspaper where the reporter talks with a zookeeper. Now, I'm also going to throw in here, too, a little bit of just my own commentary. I do not understand, maybe that's how they used to do news reports back in the late 1800s, but I cannot believe that there was any news reporter that's actually printing in the dialect of this zookeeper. And as many quotes as he's giving this man about the joke he tells and about the bribery that he's taking to speak with the reporter and all this kind of stuff. Like, if that's actually the newspaper, I need to read more news reports from the 1890s because this stuff is fun. But perhaps, who knows? In this book, though, with the report from the Pall Mall Gazette, it has a wonderfully colorful account from the zookeeper talking about this wolf that he has there at the zoo and the strange man, Dracula, who pets the wolf's ears and, kind of weirds out the zookeeper, but the wolf seems okay with it. And then the wolf, he hears a bunch of howling that night. The wolf takes off. The wolf eventually comes back the next day on the 18th, and they see that the wolf has glass mixed in with fur on his head because he appears to have gone through somehow encountered some broken glass. And so the zookeeper takes back the wolf and the reporter celebrates that the community need not be afraid any longer. There's a wolf on the prowl. Then we go back. So that published on the 18th. What we find out then is that going back to the 17th, Dr. Stewart mentions how he is grateful not to have to go to visit Lucy Westenra's house that night. He's very tired yet again. He is, he's given blood, he's watched over her, he's tired. Also, that evening, his strange patient, Renfield, comes in and stabs him, or strikes him, and he causes blood to drip from Dr. Stewart's wrist onto the ground. He bandages up his wrist, and then when he looks down, he sees Renfield lapping up the blood like an animal. Oh, drinking it off the ground. It's disgusting. And Renfield saying, "Blood is life. The blood is the life." Continues then with an account of Dr. Stewart noting that there had been a telegram delivered from Dr. Van Helsing to him, which was not properly directed. It didn't list the county in which it was to be delivered, and so therefore the telegram came 22 hours late. So, being a day late, Dr. Stewart had not realized he was meant to watch over Lucy that night on the 17th, so she had been unattended that evening. Again, Dr. Stewart, terrible gatekeeper. He might be a good doctor, but he is the worst babysitter. Just terrible. Okay, that said, he rushes then over to visit to check on Lucy Westenra, and he's saying that he's worried about having received this he's worried about receiving this telegram, and so he is he's going to continue his
I don't think I need to.
his journal entry once he gets to
I don't
Lucy.
think I need to.
The next thing we see, the last thing we see in that chapter, is actually a journal entry from Lucy Westenra herself. She writes a note saying how basically she is sure that she is weak and that she's dying and that she may not even make it till morning. And that she is very disturbed because even though she's been sleeping so soundly and so without fear, she has woken up to hear again the sounds of like a bat or something flapping outside of her window, a bat or a bird flapping. Again, we know it's Dracula. And she's quite disturbed and she's trying to rest. She looks out the window, she sees nothing but a big bat. And then her mother comes in to see her, her very ill mother. And the mother comes in and decides to lie in the bed with Lucy. She's also disturbed by this noise, the flapping outside of Lucy, tries to reassure her. Suddenly, the window smashes apart when a wolf, the wolf that Dracula had compelled to leave the zoo, rushes in, breaks the glass, and then the mother is so disturbed, she reaches for things and she pulls the garlic flower, the floral wreath off of Lucy, which again is making her vulnerable to the vampire. It all just goes down from there. The mother ends up passing out from the shock. She dies. Lucy is, gets confused by what's happening, and we can presume that Dracula is coming in. The mother dies. The maids come in because they hear the noise, and they're all disturbed about what's going on. She sends the maids down to each have a glass of wine, to restore them because they had such a shock upon finding the mother there. And then this is where it gets weird too. When Lucy goes down to see why aren't the maids coming back, she sees that the laudanum that the mother normally takes, which is a sedative. The laudanum apparently has been mixed into the wine by someone, and that the maids are all drugged, and so they're passed out. She's basically alone in the house. The servants are passed out, they've been drugged. Her dead mother is in bed with her. She feels weak and tired, so again, Dracula's already sucked some of her blood and her life force out of her again. And she is just thoroughly disturbed. She is afraid that she's not going to make it to morning. She writes this note and says, I'm going to hide the paper on my dress so that when they find it, when they find my body, they will find this note as well. And she just isn't sure if she's going to make it to morning. So, the drama. Okay, now we're going to continue with chapter 12, which begins with Dr. Stewart's diary.
The original inhabitants of Dune.
For those of you who have not read it, make a comment now. Decide for yourself. Do you think Lucy made it through the night, or will she be dead by the time they come?
Yes, I agree.
I'm trying to decide if I think she'll be dead or alive. I'm voting for still barely alive, but I don't know. Put your comment if you think, what your thoughts are. All right, let's go in and find out. Chapter 12, Dr. Stewart's diary, 18 September. I drove at once to Hillingham and arrived early. Keeping my cab at the gate, I went up the avenue alone. I knocked it gently and rang as quietly as possible, for I feared to disturb Lucy or her mother, and hoped to only bring a servant to the door. After a while, finding no response, I knocked and rang again. Still no answer. I cursed the laziness of the servants that they should lie abed at such an hour, for it was now 10 o'clock, and so rang and knocked again, but more impatiently, but still without response. Hitherto I had blamed only the servants, but now a terrible fear began to assail me. Was this desolation but another link in the chain of doom which seemed drawing tight round us? Was it indeed a house of death to which I had come too late? I know that minutes, even seconds of delay might mean hours of danger to Lucy if she had had again one of those frightful relapses. And I went round the house to try if I could find by chance an entry anywhere. I could find no means of ingress. Every window and door was fastened and locked, and I returned baffled to the porch. As I did so, I heard the rapid pit-pat of a swiftly driven horse's feet. They stopped at the gate, and a few seconds later I met Van Helsing running up the avenue. When he saw me, he gasped out, "Then it was you, and just arrived. How is she? Are we too late?" Did you not get my telegram? I answered as quickly and coherently as I could that I had only got his telegram early in the morning and had not lost a minute in coming here, and that I could not make anyone in the house hear me. He paused and raised his hat as he said solemnly, "And then I fear we are too late. God's will be done." With his usual recuperative energy, he went on, "Come, if there be no way open to get in, we must make one. Time is all in all to us now." We went round to the back of the house where there was a kitchen window. The professor took a small surgical saw from his case and, handing it to me, pointed to the iron bars which guarded the window. I attacked them at once and had very soon cut through 3 of them. Then with the long, thin knife, we pushed back the fastening of the sashes and opened the window. I helped the professor in and followed him. There was no one in the kitchen or in the servants' rooms, which were close at hand. We tried all the rooms as we went along, and in the dining room, dimly lit by rays of light through the shutters, found 4 servant women lying on the floor. There was no need to think them dead, for their stertorous breathing and the acrid smell of laudanum in the room left no doubt as to their condition. Van Helsing and I looked at each other, and as we moved away, he said, "We can attend to them later." Then we ascended to Lucy's room. For an instant or two, we paused at the door to listen, but there was no sound we could hear. With white faces and trembling hands, we opened the door gently and entered the room. How shall I describe what we saw? On the bed lay 2 women, Lucy and her mother. The latter lay farthest in, and she was covered with a white sheet, the edge of which had been blown back by the drop through the broken window, showing the drawn white face with a look of terror fixed upon it. By her side lay Lucy, with face white and still more drawn. The flowers which had been round her neck we found upon her mother's bosom, and her throat was bare, showing the 2 little wounds which we had noticed before, but looking horribly white and mangled. Without a word, the professor bent over the bed, his head almost touching poor Lucy's breast. Then he gave a quick turn of his head as of one who listens, and leaping to his feet, he cried out to me, "It is not yet too late. Quick, quick, bring the brandy." I flew downstairs and returned with it, taking care to smell and taste it, lest it too were drugged like the decanter of sherry which I found on the table. The maids were still breathing, but more restlessly, and I fancied that the narcotic was wearing off. I did not stay to make sure, but returned to Van Helsing. He rubbed the brandy, as on another occasion, on her lips and gums, and on her wrists and the palms of her hands. He said to me, "I can do this, all that can be at the present. You go wake those maids. Flick them in the face with a wet towel, and flick them hard. Make them get heat and fire and a warm bath. This poor soul is nearly as cold as that beside her. She will need to be heated before we can do anything more." I went at once and found little difficulty in waking 3 of the women. The 4th was only a young girl, and the drug had evidently affected her more strongly, so I lifted her on a sofa and let her sleep. The others were dazed at first, but as remembrance came back to them, they cried and sobbed in hysterical manner. I was stern with them, however, and would not let them talk. I told them that one life was bad enough to lose, and that if they delayed, they would sacrifice Miss Lucy. So, sobbing and crying, they went about their way, half clad as they were, and prepared fire and water. Fortunately, the kitchen and boiler fires were still alive, and there was no lack of hot water. We got a bath and carried Lucy out as she was, and placed her in it. Whilst we were busy chafing her limbs, there was a knock at the hall door. One of the maids ran off, hurried on some more clothes, and opened it. Then she returned and whispered to us that there was a gentleman who had come with a message from Mr. Holmwood. I bade her simply tell him that he must wait, for we could see no one now. She went away with the message, and, engrossed with our work, I clean forgot all about him. I never saw in all my experience the professor work in such deadly earnest. I knew, as he knew, that it was a stand-up fight with death, and in a pause told him so. He answered me in a way that I did not understand, but with the sternest look that his face could wear. If that were all, I would stop here where we are now, and let her fade away into peace, for I see no light in life over her horizon. He went on with his work with, if possible, renewed and more frenzied vigor. Presently, we both began to be conscious that the heat was beginning to be of some effect. Lucy's heart beat a trifle more audibly to the stethoscope, and her lungs had a perceptible movement. Van Helsing's face almost beamed, and as we lifted her from the bath and rolled her in a hot sheet to dry her, he said to me, "The first game is ours. Check to the king." We took Lucy into another room, which had by now been prepared, and laid her in bed and forced a few drops of brandy down her throat. I noticed that Van Helsing tied a soft silk handkerchief round her neck. She was still unconscious, and quite as bad as, if not worse than, we had ever seen her. Van Helsing called in one of the women and told her to stay with her and not to take her eyes off her till we returned, and then beckoned me out of the room. "We must consult as to what is to be done," he said as we descended the stairs. In the hall, he opened the dining room door, and we passed in, he closing the door carefully behind him. The shutters had been opened, but the blinds were already down, with that obedience to the etiquette of death which the British woman of the lower classes always rigidly observes. The room was therefore dim and dark. It was, however, light enough for our purposes. Van Helsing's sternness was somewhat relieved by a look of perplexity. He was evidently torturing his mind about something, so I waited for an instant, and he spoke. "What are we to do now? Where are we to turn for help? We must have another transfusion of blood, and that soon, or that poor girl's life won't be worth an hour's purchase. You are exhausted already. I am exhausted too. I fear to trust those women, even if they would have courage to submit. What are we to do for someone who will open his veins for her? What's the matter with me, anyhow?" The voice came from the sofa across the room, and its tones brought relief and joy to my heart, for they were those of Quincy Morris. Van Helsing started angrily at the first sound, but his face softened, and a glad look came into his eyes as I cried out, "Quincy Morris!" and rushed towards him with outstretched hands. "What brought you here?" I cried as our hands met. "I guess art is the cause." He handed me a telegram. "Have not heard from Stewart for 3 days, and am terribly anxious. Cannot leave. Father still in same condition. Send me word how Lucy is. Do not delay. Homewood." I think I came just in the nick of time. You know you have only to tell me what to do. Van Helsing strode forward and took his hand, looking him straight in the eyes as he said, "A brave man's blood is the best thing on this earth when a woman is in trouble. You're a man and no mistake. Well, the devil may work against us for all he's worth, but God sends us men when we want them." Once again, we went through that ghastly operation. I have not the heart to go through with the details. Lucy had got a terrible shock, and it told on her more than before, for though plenty of blood went into her veins, her body did not respond to the treatment as well as on the other occasions. Her struggle back into life was something frightful to see and hear. However, the action of both heart and lungs improved, and Van Helsing made a subcutaneous injection of morphia as before, and with good effect. Her fate became a profound slumber. The professor watched whilst I went downstairs with Quincy Morris and sent one of the maids to pay off one of the cabmen who were waiting. I left Quincy lying down after having a glass of wine and told the cook to get ready a good breakfast. Then a thought struck me, and I went back to the room where Lucy now was. When I came softly in, I found Van Helsing with a sheet or two of notepaper in his hand. He had evidently read it, and was thinking it over as he sat with his hand to his brow. There was a look of grim satisfaction in his face, as of one who has had a doubt solved. He handed me the paper, saying only, "It dropped from Lucy's breast when we carried her to the bath." When I had read it, I stood looking at the professor, and after a pause asked him, "In God's name, what does it all mean? Was she, or is she, mad? Or what sort of horrible danger is it?" I was so bewildered that I did not know what to say more. Van Helsing put out his hand and took the paper, saying, "Do not trouble about it now. Forget it for the present. You shall know and understand it all in good time, but it will be later. And now, what is it that you came to me to say?" This brought me back to fact, and I was all myself again. "I came to speak about the certificate of death. If we do not act properly and wisely, there may be an
I hope
inquest,
that we'll be able
and
to
that
extract
paper would
large
have to be
quantities of
produced.
spice very
I
soon.
am in hopes that we need have no inquest, for if we had, it would
If you
surely
really want
kill
to know
poor
about the
Lucy,
properties
if
of
nothing else
spice,
did.
ask your
I
mother.
know, and you know, and the other doctor who attended her knows, that Mrs. Westenra had disease of the heart, and we can certify that she died of it. Let us fill up the certificate at once, and I shall take it myself to the registrar and go on to the undertaker.
Better than the day before.
Good, oh my friend John. Well thought of. Truly, Miss Lucy, if she be sad in the foes that beset her, is at least happy in the friends that love her. 1, 2, 3, all open their veins for her, besides one old man. Ah, yes, I know, friend John. I am not blind. I'd love you all the more for it. Now, go. In the hall, I met Quincy Morris with a telegram for Arthur telling him that Mrs. Westenra was dead, that Lucy also had been ill but was now going on better, and that Van Helsing and I were with her. I told him where I was going, and he hurried me out. But as I was going, said, "When you come back, Jack, may I have 2 words with you, all to ourselves?" I nodded in reply and went out. I found no difficulty about the registration and arranged with the local undertaker to come up in the evening to measure for the coffin and to make arrangements. When I got back, Quincy was waiting for me. I told him I would see him as soon as I knew about Lucy and went up to her room. She was still sleeping, and the professor seemingly had not moved from his seat at her side. From his putting his finger to his lips, I gathered that he expected her to wake before long and was afraid of her solemn nature. So I went down to Quincy and took him into the breakfast room where the blinds were not drawn down, and which was a little more cheerful, or rather less cheerless, than the other rooms. When we were alone, he said to me, "Jack Stewart, I don't want to shove myself in anywhere where I've no right to be, but this is no ordinary case. You know I loved that girl and wanted to marry her, but although that's all past and gone, I can't help feeling anxious about her all the same. What is it that's wrong with her? The Dutchman, and a fine old fellow he is, I can see that, said that time you 2 came in the room that you must have another transfusion of blood and that both you and he were exhausted. Now I know well that you medical men speak in camera and that a man must not expect to know what they consult about in private. But this is no common matter, and whatever it is, I have done my part. Is not that so?" "That's so," I said, and he went on, "I take it that both you and Van Helsing had done already what I did today. Is not that so?" "That's so." "And I guess Art was in it too. When I saw him 4 days ago down at his own place, he looked queer. I have not seen anything pulled down so quick since I was on the pampas and had a mare that I was fond of go to grass all in one night. One of those big bats that they call vampires that got at her in the night, and what with his gorge and the vein left open, there wasn't enough blood in her to let her stand up, and I had to put a bullet through her as she lay. Jack, if you may tell me without betraying confidence, Arthur was the first. Is not that so?" As he spoke, the poor fellow looked terribly anxious. He was in a torture of suspense regarding the woman he loved, and his utter ignorance of the terrible mystery which seemed to surround her intensified his pain. His very heart was bleeding, and it took all the manhood of him, and there was a royal lot of it too, to keep him from breaking down. I paused before answering, for I felt that I must not betray anything which the professor wished to keep kept secret. But already he knew so much, and guessed so much, that there could be no reason for not answering. So I answered in the same phrase, "That's so." "And how long has this been going on?" "About 10 days." 10 days? Then I guess, Jack Stewart, that poor pretty creature that we all love has had put into her veins within that time the blood of 4 strong men. Man alive, her whole body wouldn't hold it. Then coming close to me, he spoke in a fierce half whisper. "What took it out?" I shook my head. "That," I said, "is the crux. Van Helsing is simply frantic about it, and I am at my wit's end. I can't even hazard a guess. There has been a series of little circumstances which have thrown out all our calculations as to Lucy being properly watched, but these shall not occur again. Here we stay until all be well or ill." Quincy held out his hand. "Count me in," he said. "You and the Dutchman will tell me what to do, and I'll do it." When she woke late in the afternoon, Lucy's first movement was to feel in her breast, and to my surprise, produced the paper which Van Helsing had given me to read. The careful professor had replaced it where it had come from, lest on waking she should be alarmed. Her eyes then lit on Van Helsing and on me too, and gladdened. Then she looked round the room, and seeing where she was, shuddered. She gave a loud cry and put her poor thin hands before her pale face. We both understood what was meant. That she realized to the full her mother's death. So we tried what we could to comfort her. Doubtless sympathy eased her somewhat, but she was very low in thought and spirit, and wept silently and weakly for a long time. We told her that either or both of us would now remain with her all the time, and that seemed to comfort her. Towards dusk she fell into a doze. Here a very odd thing occurred. Whilst still asleep, she took the paper from her breast and tore it in two. Van Helsing stepped over and took the pieces from her. All the same, however, she went on with the action of tearing, as though the material were still in her hands. Finally, she lifted her hands and opened them as if scattering the fragments. Van Helsing seemed surprised, and his brows gathered as if in thought, but he said nothing. 19th September. All last night she slept fitfully, being always afraid to sleep, and something weaker when she woke from it. The professor and I took in turns to watch, and we never left her for a moment unattended. Quincy Morris said nothing about his intention, but I knew that all night long he patrolled round and round the house. When the day came, its searching light showed the ravages in poor Lucy's strength. She was hardly able to turn her head, and the little nourishment which she could take seemed to do her no good. In time she slept, and both Van Helsing and I noticed a difference in her, between sleeping and waking. Whilst asleep, she looked stronger, although haggard, and her breathing was softer. Her open mouth showed the pale gums drawn back from the teeth, which thus looked positively longer and sharper than usual. When she woke, the softness of her eyes evidently changed the expression, for she looked her own self, although a dying one. In the afternoon she asked for Arthur, and we telegraphed for him. Quincy went off to meet him at the station. When he arrived, it was nearly 6 o'clock, and the sun was setting full and warm, and the red light streamed in through the window and gave more color.
Welcome back, everybody, to Secret of Pink Land. And we are in Pink Land. Yeah, that's what we are. Oh, man. Don't even ask me to wake up right now because my body ain't up for it. I guess we're going to have to. I've already recorded this one time, but
Wait a second. Slow down and see just how peaceful today can be. Thank you so much for being here. You can call me Sebastian Smalls. This is gonna be Princess Zelda's birthday party of Danger, a Bennett fan fiction read by Fairy Glitter B. Again, thank you so much for being here. Wish us luck.
Cruel Castletown had been excited and busy for the past few weeks, and with good reason. Princess... Hello, my darlings. I am the Glitter Fairy Bomber, your friendly neighborhood plainclothes witch, here to remind you that it's time to get comfy, preferably out in nature, under a tree or something, and listen to the latest witch read aloud. Today's episode is a nerdy video game fan fiction written by a friend of mine, entitled Princess Zelda's Birthday Party of Danger. Cruel Castletown had been excited and busy for the past few weeks, and with good reason. Princess Zelda's birthday celebration was fast approaching, and the king had spared no expense in making preparations. After all, this was no ordinary birthday party. Not only was Zelda a princess, which was obvious, but it was customary and cool for a young girl to be regarded as a woman, beginning on her 16th birthday. On top of that, it was widely rumored that the King of Cruel had a husband in mind for his daughter, and some even suspected that he would make the announcement at the celebration. Princess Zelda had heard all of these rumors, and it suffices to say she was not at all pleased. And she first heard of the rumors and wanted to trust it as a girl, and so in front of her father immediately. Now, her father, the king, was considered by many to be a man and a shame. Princess Zelda had reached out to the open book. Whenever I find myself, call me Ishmael. Ishmael is a damn. Some years ago, never mind how long, since I find myself a little unfunny person, and nothing to do with my name is interesting. Sure, I thought some sales about her little vessel water jar. It is a way of transit and starting off the spring. And carry the circulation means whenever I find myself, call me Ishmael. Ishmael is a damn. Some years ago, and that's why how long this has to make myself a little unfunny enough person. And nothing.
About time you showed up.
What? No. Look out. He wins. Let's watch now. Wrong doers don't care. Dark of night. Wait for the danger. One stand for each life. It is only true For years it has been whispered, in the dark dens of the wicked, in the bright halls of the just, now at last, it can be told. You can almost see the air, dirty gray with cigarette smoke, and thick with the smell of a sea. The bar is called the Last Resort, a gathering place for those with nowhere else to go. It has been a safe haven for those who skirt the edges of the law. That is, until tonight. Christ! What in blazes is he doing here? Simply the dark iron trooper who strides across the smoke-choked barn. One glance into his murderously cold eyes sends burly men who pride themselves on their viciousness scrambling out of his path. When he stops, so do half the hearts of the group.
I figured I'd find you here, snitch.
I've been keeping my nose clean, fat man. What do you want from me?
I always want, snitch, information. I received a package in the mail today containing a costume.
Why are you so mean to me? Why are you
I
so
want to know
mean?
who sent it.
So what do I look like anyway? The post office? Hey, I ain't heard nothing about no packages. And even if I did know something, For the barest instant, the informant's gaze wanders past the backbench chauffeur. And in that self-same instant, the dark night moves.
You want to play rough, punk? You picked a bad night. Wasn't very smart, snitch. I just wanted to talk.
Stay away from me, fat man. I'm warning you.
But now I'll get my answers another way.
To herself, she must have gone away, just as unobtrusively as she had arrived. The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. Chapter 1. Christmas Eve. It was 9:30 on Christmas Eve. As I crossed the long entranceway of Road Streets on my way from the dining room, where we had just enjoyed the first of our happy festive meals, towards the drawing room and the fire around which my family were now assembled, I paused, and then, as I often do in the course of an evening, went to the front door, opened it, and stepped outside. I have always liked to take a breath of the evening, to smell the air, whether it is sweetly scented and balmy with the flowers of midsummer, pungent with the bonfires and leaf mould of autumn, or crackling cold from frost and snow. I like to look about me at the sky above my head, whether there are moon and stars or utter blackness, and into the darkness ahead of me. I like to listen for the cries of nocturnal creatures, and the moaning rise and fall of the wind, or the pattering of rain in the orchard trees. I enjoy the rush of air towards me up the hill from the flat pastures of the river valley. Tonight, I smelled at once, and with a lightning heart, that there had been a change in the weather. All the previous week we had had rain, chilling rain, and a mist that lay low about the house and over the countryside. From the windows, the view stretched no farther than a yard or two down the garden. It was wretched weather, never seeming to come fully light, and raw too. There had been no pleasure in walking. The visibility was too poor for any shooting, and the dogs were permanently morose and muddy. Inside the house, the lamps were lit throughout the day, and the walls of larder, outhouse and cellar oozed damp and smelled sour. The fires sputtered and smoked, burning dismally low. My spirits have for many years now been excessively affected by the ways of the weather, and I confess that had it not been for the air of cheerfulness and bustle that prevailed in the rest of the house, I should have been quite cast down in gloom and lethargy, unable to enjoy the flavour of life as I should like, and irritated by my own susceptibility. But Esme is merely stung by inclement weather into a spirited defiance. And so the preparations for our Christmas holiday have this year been more than usually extensive and vigorous. I took a step or two out from under the shadow of the house so that I could see around me in the moonlight. Monk's Peak stands at the summit of land that rises gently up to some 400 feet, from where the little river New traces its winding way in a north to south direction, across this fertile and sheltered part of the country. Below us are pastures, interspersed with small tracts of mixed broadleaf woodland. But at our backs, for several square miles, it is a quite different area of rough scrub and heathland, a patch of wildness in the midst of well-farmed country. We are but 2 miles from a good-sized village, 7 from the principal market town, yet there is an air of remoteness and isolation which makes us feel ourselves to be much further from civilization. I first saw Monk's Peak one afternoon